My older sister, who had always hated studying, suddenly announced she wanted to go to university. Not only that, she managed to convince our parents to marry me off to the son of a military officer, Eric, so she could use the dowry to fund her education. In that moment, I realized something chilling. She had also been reborn. In my past life, my sister believed studying was useless. She married Eric right after finishing high school because his family offered a generous dowry. But when Eric was reassigned to a remote border region, she refused to go with him, constantly complaining about the harsh environment. Meanwhile, I worked part-time jobs to pay for college, eventually landing a secure government job and becoming a respectable citizen. But my sister? While living in the military district, she used her father-in-law's name to accept bribes. Her actions led to his investigation and demotion. In the end, her mother-in-law kicked her out. After the divorce, she moved to Shanghai to invest in the stock market, but lost everything when it crashed, including our parents' retirement savings. Desperate and out of options, she came to me demanding money to start over. When I refused, she pulled out a knife. In the chaos, she stabbed me 12 times. I bled to death. And when I opened my eyes again, I found myself at the exact moment when she had just asked our parents to marry me to Eric. This time, I said yes without hesitation. I dropped out of school. Chapter 1. He's the son of an officer. What a golden opportunity. If Lisa hadn't brought food to Eric and his mother, do you think you'd have gotten such a proposal? So, what if his father's an officer? Eric's just a low-ranking soldier. Once I get into college and earn city residency, I can choose any man I want. No matter how much our parents tried to persuade her, Lisa remained as stubborn as ever. It was the 1970s. Eric and his mother first arrived at our farm in utter poverty, skinny as skeletons, treated like outcasts. Everyone avoided them, too afraid to help. Only I, under cover of night, dared to bring them food and a cotton coat from home. Grateful, the first thing Eric and his mother did after returning to the city was to ask for my hand in marriage. But in my previous life, Lisa stole the credit. Because it was dark, Eric's mother never saw my face clearly. She only asked which family the girl came from, and without hesitation, my parents told her it had been Lisa, their beloved eldest daughter. I could do nothing but watch as Lisa married the officer's son and lived a life of luxury, status, and admiration. College costs money, my father barked, slamming his tobacco pipe on the wobbly wooden table, nearly knocking it over. We're so poor we can't even afford basic needs. Where are we going to get money for your education? Then have the second daughter marry Eric, Lisa said casually, but her tone was sharp as a blade. Let's ask for a higher dowry. That way, I'll have money for university. Lisa knew perfectly well that marrying Eric meant becoming a military wife and following him to the remote borderlands, a place she wouldn't dare go near. But she had no problem pushing me into that hell. She marched over, snatched the book from my hands, its rough edges scraping painfully against my palm. I've already spoken to the school, Lisa declared smugly. Your enrollment has been canceled. Waving the textbook and notebook mockingly in front of me, she added, from now on, school and studying have nothing to do with you. All this is mine now. It wasn't a conversation. It was a decree. I lifted my head, met her triumphant gaze, and smiled calmly. All right, fine. My mother sighed, eyeing Lisa with a look that suggested her decision was set in stone. This girl doesn't know what's good for her. One day you'll regret it, you'll see. Then she turned to me with a sneer. You're lucky, you worthless girl. Marrying into Eric's family, remember to help your sister find a proper match too. Eric's just a lowly soldier, nothing special. Once your sister gets into college, she'll marry someone important like a commander. Chapter 2. My parents had always been this way. Anything good went to my sister. And when it came to me, just 2 words, not worthy. All because my mother nearly died giving birth to me after 3 days of labor. Since then, they called me bad luck and a curse. Every time Lisa mistreated me, they thought it was justice. This time, by marrying me off their so-called family curse, they not only rid themselves of me, but also secured Lisa's university tuition. To them, it was a fair trade. So they rushed to tell the matchmaker to ask Eric's family for double the dowry and declare the marriage settled. The matchmaker rolled her eyes, but agreed with a forced smile. As she left, I overheard her muttering, All this fuss over one meal, and they think there's some kind of royalty. Eric's family got the message. Though upset, they had no choice but to accept. That very night, they sent over the dowry. Lisa paraded around the entire village flaunting her brand new Shanghai brand wristwatch, proudly strutting from one end to the other. Meanwhile, under the dim glow of a kerosene lamp, my parents counted the 1,200 yuan dowry money carefully, bill by bill. My own dowry, on the other hand, consisted of nothing more than a piece of old, worn-out fabric. That same night, I used the sewing machine Eric's family had brought as part of the dowry to make myself a shirt and a dress. As always, Lisa didn't miss a chance to throw in her sarcastic jabs. Is that for you? A married daughter is like spilled water. If you break the sewing machine, how is Mom going to make my new clothes? I ignored her, snipped the last stray thread, and returned to my room. On her desk lay a pile of blank exercise sheets. I chuckled to myself. Lisa, you truly have no idea how much effort it takes to study in the city. In my past life, when the National College entrance exams were reinstated, there wasn't a single teacher in our village who knew how to prepare students. My parents told me to give up and stay home to work the fields. But I refused to accept that fate. Day after day, I followed the educated young people who lived in town, asking them about everything I didn't understand. When they returned to their cities, I was left with no one to teach me. Still, I walked over 15 kilometers to the next town wearing nothing but torn cloth shoes just to borrow study materials. While tending livestock on the hills, I studied under the trees, chewing on cornbread and drinking cold water. Every free moment I had was spent reviewing notes, and that's how I managed to get into a prestigious university in the city. My parents, always boastful, never once acknowledged my sacrifices. They told anyone who would listen, "Our daughter is naturally gifted. She just glanced at the textbooks and passed the exam." Lisa believed it. She thought she too was a genius, that all she needed was to open my books and skim a little, and she'd pass the exam too. But as she held my worn-out workbook like a treasure, she didn't realize that without determination and perseverance, there was no escaping this soul-devouring family. Chapter 3. The day of my wedding to Eric finally arrived. His parents had booked a modest restaurant in the city for the ceremony. My parents, who had never once set foot in a city, looked awkward and out of place. Lisa, on the other hand, couldn't hide her disdain as she watched them fumble around. "It's just a cheap little restaurant," she scoffed. "Nothing special. It's nowhere near the luxury of the White Swan in Guangzhou." And she was right. This place was nothing like the extravagant life she had once lived in her past life after taking bribes and indulging in luxury. The wedding was simple, but followed all the traditional customs. Eric's mother gently took my hand and said, "Diana, we wanted to organize something more elegant, but the dowry was arranged in such a rush that we couldn't afford anything better. I hope you understand." I smiled and assured her it was perfectly fine, but Lisa rolled her eyes, visibly unimpressed. If the general gave a single command, people would be fighting over who gets to pay for this wedding. Who do they think they're fooling with such excuses? Before Eric's mother could respond, a commotion erupted outside the banquet hall. "Eric, don't do anything reckless. The bride's family is already here. If you call off the wedding now, how will your father maintain his reputation?" Was Eric trying to cancel the wedding? His mother forced a smile, clearly shaken, and rushed out to see what was going on. Though I didn't have many memories of Eric, I remembered him as a man of principle. In our past life, even when he was reassigned to a difficult border post, he never once complained, even when Lisa refused to go with him because she found the conditions unbearable. Later, when Lisa caused a scandal by using Eric's father's name for illegal gain, leading to his demotion, Eric still honored their relationship by giving her a generous settlement in their divorce. He valued promises and responsibility, so it was hard to believe he would back out of the wedding now. Through the narrow crack of the banquet hall door, I saw his childhood friends trying to calm him down. In the blur of movement, I caught a glimpse of his face, his sharp features, and intense gaze. He had transformed from the frail boy I once knew into someone strong and assured. "I don't care what they say, I won't marry that wretched girl. I'll repay the debt, but I won't accept her as my wife." Wretched? His words stabbed me like a dagger, and a cold chill crept into my heart. Standing next to me, Lisa burst into mocking laughter. Diana, you had no idea your cursed reputation had spread this far even to your future husband. Then leaning close, she whispered with malicious glee, a curse marrying a nobody, what a perfect match. I clenched my fists so hard my knuckles cracked. Moments later, Eric was practically dragged into the hall by his friends, his discomfort written all over his face. Lisa folded her arms and struck her usual haughty pose, her presence always commanding attention. But Eric seemed to ignore everything around him. His eyes were locked onto me. When he noticed the identical flower pinned to my chest, his brows furrowed. Why is it you? Wasn't the bride supposed to be Lisa? Lisa's face darkened, clearly furious at being ignored. Without hesitation, she snapped. Who would want to marry a mere soldier like you? Maybe you should ask yourself if you're even worthy. With that, she flipped her long black braids over her shoulder and looked away with disdain. Eric's expression shifted as realization dawned. I spoke calmly. You said you wanted to marry the girl who helped you and your mother. That girl is me. Eric's gaze froze, and his chest visibly rose and fell. He looked at me with an intensity that seemed to hold back years of buried emotion, as if he'd been waiting for this moment for a very long time. I know, he finally admitted. My eyes widened in surprise, and a bold thought crossed my mind. I'm sorry. Let's continue with the wedding. I will marry her, Eric declared firmly. Chapter 4. Everyone at the wedding was bewildered by Eric's sudden change in behavior, but his mother quickly smoothed over the awkwardness. He's just so excited to marry his bride that he got confused. What a silly boy, she joked, though the shift in Eric's attitude did not go unnoticed. A red flush crept up his neck and spread across his cheeks. Lisa rolled her eyes with a huff and returned to her seat with an air of superiority. The rest of the ceremony went on without issue, though near the end, Lisa stirred the pot once again. She casually remarked that the countryside wasn't suitable for studying and demanded that Eric find her a tutor in the city. The tension on Eric's face was unmistakable, clearly didn't want to get involved. But his mother enthusiastically stepped in. Of course we'll help. If the daughter of a family asks a favor, how could we refuse? Without hesitation, she arranged for Lisa to stay at a city guest house so she could prepare for her exams. Before leaving, my parents bombarded me with instructions. Don't forget where you come from now that you're married. Bring some of the good food from Eric's place for your sister. She needs it more than you. Make sure she eats 3 meals a day and deliver them personally. Don't let her get too tired. Your sister's exams are this family's top priority. Taking care of her is your main responsibility. Lisa lounged lazily on the guest house bed, cracking sunflower seeds she'd taken from the wedding banquet, a smug smile on her face. Did you hear that? She sneered. Just because you married into a good family doesn't mean you're anything special. Wherever you go, you'll always be my servant. My parents nodded vigorously, adding, she's right. Never forget where you came from. I held my tongue, swallowing my anger in silence. For the next 2 weeks, I ran back and forth between the guest house and Eric's home, tending to Lisa's every need. Realizing how it was affecting me, Eric eventually ordered the family cook to deliver Lisa's meals instead. But Lisa, always theatrical, shattered a plate in front of the cook. Go back and tell Diana to stop flaunting her so-called title as the commander's wife in front of me. If I hadn't turned down the chance to marry Eric, she'd still be herding cows in some forgotten mountain. When Eric found out, he was furious and insisted on sending Lisa back to the village. But Lisa didn't back down. She openly mocked him, her words laced with venom. Don't think you're so great, Eric. One day they'll ship you off to some desolate border region, and you'll never come back. Who knows, maybe you'll die there, and no one will even bother to bury you. Her words struck a nerve. Eric's eyes burned with rage, his whole body trembling. I remembered the stories from my past life, how the poplars in the frontier became his grave, and how his remains were never brought home. Eric glared at Lisa, fists clenched and shaking with fury, ready to explode. I quickly stepped in, dragging him back to the house to diffuse the tension. Once alone, Eric turned to me, visibly upset. Why do you always take her side and never mine? He burst out, his frustration boiling over for the first time. I hesitated, unable to find the right words. There was a strange tension in the air between us, something I couldn't quite name. It wasn't time yet. I just had to wait a little longer. Chapter 5. On the final day of the university entrance exam, I was more nervous than Lisa. If my memory was correct, Eric's transfer orders were also supposed to arrive today. Lisa entered the exam hall with confident strides, tossing a smug remark over her shoulder before disappearing behind the doors. Diana, after today, let's see what else you got to brag about. My parents watched her with eyes full of hope, as if their wildest dreams were about to come true. I could almost see the metaphorical smoke rising from the ancestral graves. My palms were damp with sweat. When I turned around, I saw Eric across the street waving at me with a wide smile. In his hand was a brown envelope sealed with a familiar red stamp. My heart skipped a beat. I rushed toward him, anxiety growing with each step. But the warmth and carefree ease in his smile helped calm my nerves. "Is it settled?" I asked. "Yes, it's done," he replied, handing me the envelope. I opened it quickly. Inside was an official transfer order assigning him to Davison Island. It wasn't the remote, frozen desert I feared, but it wasn't exactly close either. It wasn't what I had hoped for. Disappointment flickered across my face as I looked at him. "You still have to go?" Eric reached out and ruffled my hair gently, a playful smile tugging at his lips. "This is already a good outcome. Soldiers can't avoid sacrifice, you know?" Of course, he was right, but that didn't loosen the knot of worry in my chest. He noticed my silence and chuckled. "Why are you so worried about where I'm assigned?" "Don't worry. You don't have to follow me to the island. Life on a military base can be tough. Stay here, get a job at the barracks, or apply to university, whatever you prefer." There wasn't a hint of blame in Eric's voice. If anything, his honesty only made me feel more uneasy. "What are you talking about?" I murmured. "I'm not worried about the sacrifice, I'm worried that I what?" He interrupted, leaning in so close I could feel the warmth of his breath on my cheek. My mind went blank. "That you'll die." Eric froze. His smile faded as he stared at me intently. Then, almost hesitantly, he asked, "Diana, do you believe in reincarnation?" I looked into his eyes, my heart pounding. His words confirmed what I had begun to suspect. Eric had been reborn too. "In my past life, I didn't marry you," he admitted softly, a trace of regret in his voice. "I married Lisa. Your parents said it was she who saved my mother and me. But no matter how hard I tried, I could never love her. So when the transfer order came, I volunteered for the harshest, most remote post just to get away from her. And as I expected, she couldn't handle the desolation. Within days, she packed her bags and returned to the city. Later, during the military downsizing, she used my father's name to scam my comrades, promising she could use his influence to keep them enlisted. But she didn't have that power. Not even my father could have done that. When the scheme collapsed, the consequences were catastrophic. My father died in prison, disgraced." Eric's voice cracked. I could see his shoulders trembling from the pain he had long buried. "I hated her," he went on. "But she was my wife, and I thought she had saved my life. I didn't have the heart to seek revenge. I divorced her, sent her back to her hometown, and thought it was all over." At that moment, Eric's body trembled so violently that I instinctively wrapped my arms around him, holding him tightly as he continued to pour out everything in a low voice near my ear. "But then I found out the truth," he whispered, his voice breaking. "It wasn't Lisa who saved us that night. It was you." Chapter 6. I remembered clearly after the divorce, Lisa returned to the village furious over the little compensation she had received. She didn't waste a second before ranting about Eric's family. It was during one of her angry outbursts that she accidentally let the truth slip that she had stolen my place. Even before she stabbed me in my past life, she had screamed curses, blaming me for stealing her life by taking her position as Eric's wife. It turned out Eric already knew the truth. I gently patted his back as he buried his face in the curve of my neck. I could feel his warm, uneven breath against my skin. "It's all right," I whispered. "That's all behind us now. What matters is that this time, we didn't lose each other." Eric chuckled softly, wiping away his tears and giving my nose a playful pinch. Such an optimistic girl. Just as I was about to hug him tighter, a face I loathed appeared in the distance. Lisa, scowling, a few strands of hair escaping her tightly braided hair. She stomped toward us, her usual annoyed expression already in place, and before she was even close, she started complaining. That stupid workbook of Diana's is useless. And the tutor Eric's mother found as a joke. There were so many questions I couldn't even answer. As always, my parents hovered at her side, offering empty encouragement. If you couldn't answer them, no one could. Don't worry, you'll definitely pass. Our family has good luck, my father said. Lisa seemed slightly cheered by that, even nodding as if it made perfect sense. That's true. They say the standards have been lowered ever since they resumed the entrance exams. I'll definitely get into a top university. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Lisa, who was already on edge, spun around furiously. As always, she needed someone to unleash her frustration on, and I'd given her the perfect excuse. If I fail, it's because of that stupid workbook you gave me, she shouted, stomping over to me. She raised her hand to strike me, but before she could touch me, Eric grabbed her wrist and twisted her arm behind her back. Ah! What are you doing, Eric? Lisa shrieked, drawing the attention of the students exiting the exam hall. Eric, dressed in his military uniform, didn't want to cause a scene. He released her and stepped between us, shielding me with his body. Lisa, rubbing her wrist in pain, caught sight of the transfer order in my hand. Oh, transferred to the borders, she sneered. Let me tell you something, Eric, aside from your looks, what else do you have to offer? Your father may be a commander, but he's never abused his power. And you? A commander's son who's just as useless as any common soldier. You're the joke of Haiching. Lisa had taken the honor and integrity of Eric's family something admirable and twisted it into an insult. I couldn't stay silent any longer. Lisa, it doesn't matter what Eric has or doesn't have. He's my husband. You have no right to speak about him like that. My words ignited Lisa's fury. She lunged at me again, but Eric stopped her once more. So, now you're defending your husband, Diana? Who do you think you are to talk to me that way? She screamed, her face red with rage. Did you forget how you almost killed Mom when you were born? You're a burden to this family. You owe us your entire life. Your only purpose is to repay that debt. And if you ever speak to me like that again, I'll make you regret it. Her bloodshot eyes and clenched fists said she was ready to tear me apart. Before Eric could intervene, my mother appeared out of nowhere and slapped me across the face. The crack echoed in the air. My cheek burned, and my head rang from the blow. Ungrateful brat, my mother shouted. Helping strangers humiliate your own sister? I should have never given birth to you. I pressed my hand to my stinging cheek, unable to believe what had just happened. If they hated me so much, what was left for me to do? Tell me your price. What will it take for you to leave me alone? You regret having me? Well, I regret having parents like you. My father, furious, rolled up his sleeves, ready to teach me a lesson, but Lisa stopped him. There was a glint of greed in her eyes. Is that what you want? She hissed. Fine. Pay us back for the years we raised you, and we'll leave you alone. How much? I asked, my voice as cold as ice. Lisa smirked cruelly. 10,000 yuan. For all the years we fed you, clothed you, and gave you a roof over your head. That's the bare minimum you owe us. 10,000 yuan, an astronomical amount for most families, let alone for me. But my lips curled into a bitter smile. If that was the price to cut all ties, I'd find a way to pay it. Chapter 7. Lisa, as expected, had no limits when it came to her greed. Since we were kids, I'd always worn her hand-me-downs and eaten what no one else wanted. Raising me cost less than feeding a pig from the production team. The only real expense they ever made on me was my high school education, and that was only because I spent an entire night on my knees begging them to let me study. I gritted my teeth and said, fine. 10,000 yuan it is. But once I pay you that money, you will never be my family again. I took Eric's hand and walked away without looking back, ignoring Lisa's shouts behind me. Diana, I can help you get the money. Don't worry about me. I'll find a way. Tomorrow, I'm going with you to Tahitian Island, and I'll earn that 10,000 yuan in 6 months. Eric looked at me in surprise at my determination. After a moment, he nodded firmly. All right. I trust you. I know you can do it. Tahitian Island was near Zhu County, a region where the pearl farming industry was just beginning to bloom. In my past life, I had worked in the city's fisheries department and met many pearl cultivators. I had always been fascinated by that world. If not for the restrictions placed on government employees doing business, I would have invested in pearls back then. This time, I had the perfect opportunity to use that knowledge and enter the market. Eric supported me wholeheartedly, even reaching out to a friend in Jew County to help me find a temporary place to stay. That allowed me to stay close to the market while returning to the island to be with him whenever possible. During those first few months, I studied the pearl farming process and learned the dynamics of the local market. Thanks to my experience in the fisheries department, networking with buyers was easy. Before second-generation pearls flooded the market, I had already signed contracts with over 100 merchants to source pearls directly. In less than 6 months, working as an intermediary, I made more money than I ever imagined. The 10,000 yuan I needed was ready. The day I returned home to deliver the money, Lisa stood frozen when she saw me. My modern clothes and the glow of my now soft, radiant skin thanks to the southern climate stood in stark contrast to her appearance. Lisa looked me up and down with a mix of jealousy and disdain. Looking like that, I doubt you stayed with Eric. You talk about sacrifice, but in the end, you're living like a queen while your husband suffers at the border. I faced her calmly. Who said I didn't stay with Eric? I was with him on Tahitian Island. Tahitian? Wasn't he supposed to be sent to a distant border post? Lisa was clearly confused. Without answering, I pulled out a thick wad of crisp banknotes from my purse and placed them in front of my parents.
Here.
10,000 yuan or more, no less. I'm paying back everything you claim to have spent on me. From now on, we are no longer family. My parents snatched the money and started counting it note by note like it was treasure. It's real. 10,000 exactly, my mother gasped. Diana, how did you manage this? I didn't know you were so clever. The woman who had always looked down on me had suddenly changed her tune. Your sister only said those things out of anger. We're familiar, there's no need to talk about debts. Everything stays in the family. As she spoke, she carefully wrapped the bills in a handkerchief and tucked them into her pocket. I knew exactly where that money would end up in Lisa's dowry. I sold and cultivated pearls, I explained. There's a very active pearl market near Tahitian Island. That's where I made the money. Lisa couldn't take it anymore. With one furious motion, she knocked over the chair she was sitting on. Diana, how is this possible? Weren't you supposed to be suffering at some remote border post? How did you manage to make so much money? Lisa screamed. I looked at her with an innocent smile and replied with feigned naivety. Border post? Who told you Eric was sent there? His transfer order clearly said Tahitian Island. I followed him as his wife and happened to find a chance to earn some money nearby. Is that so wrong? Lisa trembled with rage, her quivering lips betraying her frustration. So, what does all this mean? What was the point of studying so hard for the university exam? I failed. I have to repeat the whole year. I couldn't even find a decent tutor. If I'd known this would happen, I would have married Eric myself. Chapter 8. A few months ago, on the day the entrance exam results were released, just as expected, Lisa didn't pass. The celebratory banner she had prepared for her supposed first place ended up collecting dust and became the subject of ridicule among the village youth. Now, everyone in the village loved comparing me to Lisa. I was the proud wife of a soldier, while she remained nothing more than a struggling farm girl. Lisa tried to defend herself, insisting that once she repeated the year, she would surely pass the next time. And that I, living in some desolate frontier, would likely never return. But when I came home to repay the debt they claimed I owed, something inside her completely shattered. I'm done repeating the exam. Let someone else take it if they want. I quit, she screamed, tearing up her test papers and practice books, letting the pages scatter through the air like falling snow. Then she grabbed the collar of my shirt with such force that I felt the skin beneath tear. Go back and divorce Eric. Tell him it was all a mistake, that I'm the one who saved him and his mother. I laughed coldly. And why would I do that? Lisa grabbed a rolling pin from the kitchen. With one dull thud, the world went black. When I awoke, I was in the basement of her house. A bloody bandage had been loosely tied around my forehead, and my vision was blurry. I summoned all my strength and banged on the basement door once, twice, 3 times.
Lisa. Dad. Mom.
Let me out. I screamed as I pounded the door until my hands bled. Finally, I heard movement above. Lisa's voice came through, cold and cruel. Here's the deal, Diana. Either you go back and ask for a divorce yourself and let me marry Eric, or I'll find some random man, make something happen between the two of you, and let's see if Eric still wants a used woman like you. My heart sank. Neither option was truly a choice. Still, I had to think fast. A strategic retreat seemed like the only way out. Lisa, I'll go back and ask for the divorce. I'll do exactly what you say, just let me out. A sliver of light slipped through the door as Lisa's face appeared. Remember this. When you return, you tell everyone I'm the one who saved Eric and his mother. Or else. But then something shifted in her expression. Her face darkened, and her eyes gleamed with malicious intent. Without warning, she kicked me hard down the basement stairs. Pain exploded in my back as I slammed against the steps. My limbs went numb. I barely managed to shield my head. No, you're too clever. If I let you out now, you'll never do what I say. Better if I find a man myself. That's safer. Her voice faded, but each word cut deep like a blade. Lisa, I'll do it. I swear. Just let me out. I begged, dragging my bruised body toward the door. But no answer came. Time slowed to a crawl, minutes stretching endlessly. Then I heard Ida Mann's voice above. My heart pounded as I reached for an old pickaxe in the corner of the basement. My hands trembled as I readied myself to fight. The door creaked open, and a faint ray of moonlight filtered in. Without thinking, I swung the pickaxe at the opening with all my strength. There was no cry of pain. Instead, the weapon stopped midair, caught by someone with incredible strength. I tried to yank it back, but the hand on the other side didn't budge. Panic surged through me. This wasn't just Annie, it was someone trained. I let go of the pickaxe and scrambled for something else, but I tripped and fell to the ground in my clumsiness. The footsteps behind me grew louder. Cold sweat soaked my back as I curled up in the corner, trembling. Please, I beg you. Let me go. I'll give you money, 1,000, 2,000 yuan, anything you want. Just let me go, and I'll repay you in the next life if I have to. A deep, familiar male voice cut through the darkness. 20 years of serving others wasn't enough for you? And now you want to promise your next life too? Recognition hit me like lightning. Eric? Is that you? Chapter 9. Strong arms wrapped around me, pulling me into a firm chest that felt like something out of a dream. It's really you. How did you know I was here? I whispered. I could feel Eric's rapid heartbeat against me for the first time. I realized he had been truly afraid. I was scared to death, he murmured. Paul told me you went home to return the money, so I took leave and came right away. But I arrived half a day too late and you were already gone. I asked your parents, and they said you had already left. But you weren't at the station. Not in the county, there was no trace of you. I thought you'd been kidnapped. A soft sob escaped my lips. In a way, I was kidnapped by my own sister. Eric removed his jacket and draped it over my shoulders, hugging me tightly like he was afraid I might vanish again. I searched your entire house from top to bottom. The basement was the last place I checked. If I hadn't found you there, his voice trembled slightly. I don't even want to think about it. The moonlight lit up his chiseled profile, making him look more striking than ever. Without thinking, I leaned in and gave him a quick kiss on the lips. Thank you. Eric's face turned bright red, like a tomato. Whatever he was about to say vanished in a flustered mumble, leaving him adorably speechless. He helped me out of the basement, holding me firmly. As soon as we stepped outside, Eric kicked open the front door of my parents' house. Father-in-law. Mother-in-law, he said coldly, his voice echoing with command. This is the last time I'll call you that. From this moment on, Diana belongs to my family. She has nothing more to do with you. My parents froze, terror written all over their faces as Eric stormed inside and drove a kitchen knife into the wooden bench next to my father's pillow. The blade stood upright, just inches from his head, leaving him too stunned to speak. At the door, Lisa stood frozen, clinging to the arm of a sleazy-looking man she had brought with her. What are you doing here? She stammered, her voice shaking. Eric's demeanor shifted. The aura of military training and authority radiated from him like a silent storm. The sheer force of his presence made Lisa instinctively take a step back. With one swift motion, Eric knocked the man beside her to the ground. "Get lost," he growled. The man didn't need to be told twice. He scrambled to his feet and bolted, leaving Lisa alone to face the storm. Eric fixed his gaze on her, his voice low but brimming with menace. "If you ever even think about hurting my wife again, I will take that knife and cut your legs off. Do you believe me?" Lisa collapsed to the floor, her courage drained completely. I didn't spare her another glance. Holding tightly to Eric's hand, I walked out of that house without ever looking back. I had done all I could. I had said all I needed to say. From here on, their fate was no longer mine to worry about. Chapter 10. 2 years later, Eric was promoted for his outstanding performance and became chief of staff. Meanwhile, my pearl business flourished, expanding into international markets. I opened exclusive counters in major department stores and began planning my own jewelry brand. Eric supported me wholeheartedly, but he couldn't bear how little time we spent together. He insisted on transferring back to Haicheng, which sparked a rather heated argument. Well, more of a lecture from me. "Do you realize if you come back now, all the effort you put into your work on Black Mountain Island will be wasted? You've only got 1 year left. Why can't you just hold on a little longer?" "But I miss you, honey," Eric said, wearing the expression of a sad little puppy. I sighed, staring him down. "Tough it out. Even if you come back now, I won't have time for you. I'm too busy building my brand." With a defeated look, Eric reluctantly agreed. A year later, he was promoted again, this time to a position in Beijing. After much thought, he called to propose an idea. "Love, what do you think about setting up your brand's headquarters in Beijing?" I couldn't help but laugh on the phone. Of course. My in-laws moved to Beijing too. That year, we celebrated Lunar New Year together, joyfully making dumplings as a family. I went to my room and returned with 2 red velvet boxes, one holding a pearl necklace for my mother-in-law, the other a brooch for my father-in-law. Though retired, he still dressed in suits to take her dancing. Seeing their faces light up as they received their gifts warmed my heart. "Diana, you're so much more thoughtful than Eric. You're like an angel to us," my mother-in-law beamed with pride. Eric, almost 30, stood behind her making funny faces. "Right, because Diana must be your real daughter." "I'm probably adopted," he joked, pretending to pout. The room filled with laughter, but then my mother-in-law suddenly turned serious. "Diana, I heard Lisa's been looking for you lately. Is everything okay?" I stopped playing around and replied calmly, "Don't worry, Mom. She won't bother me again." Chapter 11. After I returned home to repay the money, Lisa completely abandoned the idea of taking the university entrance exam. She took the money I had given and moved to Shanghai, claiming she would strike it rich in the stock market. Armed with memories from her past life, she was convinced she'd succeed. But Lisa had no talent for investing and ended up losing everything. Eventually, she borrowed a few yuan and returned to the village on an old green train, penniless. My parents urged her to marry quickly, suggesting a few older bachelors from the village. Lisa refused and left again. The next time I saw her, it was in connection with a human trafficking case. Some of Eric's colleagues heard a woman crying out my name and contacted him immediately. When I went to see her, Lisa begged me to help her. But I couldn't. Dozens of young women had lost their youth because of her. She didn't deserve forgiveness. One of Eric's comrades asked if I knew her. I shook my head and walked away. That year, the penalty for trafficking women and children was death. When I returned home, I sent my parents one final sum of money, enough for them to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. But I didn't tell them about Lisa. They didn't know, and they never would, that no one would come to visit them again. They remained in that old house, clinging to the hope that their eldest daughter would one day return. Meanwhile, I had finally escaped the family that had drained me to the bone. My career soared. Commercials for my brand played on national television. I had a loving husband, in-laws who treated me like their own daughter, and a peaceful, healthy life. That was enough for me. This life made me feel whole. The tiny grain of sand had become a shining pearl. This glory, this happiness, I earned it. From this day forward, I will shine even brighter and live a life more radiant and dazzling than ever before.